Hello, Internet. Gino, that being Gino Greco, here again with another episode of Deep Listens, and it's time to get down and boogie with Disco Elysium. This game, it's a lot, and we've got a lot to talk about. And to join me in discussing this crime thriller, I am joined by Pete the Body Busby.
Hey, everybody. Excited to talk about a game that, had much going on. In hindsight, I probably should have came up with a fun fact about Disco. That did not occur to me. So instead, I have one about computers. I have two about bugs, actually.
Yes.
So this one's slightly apocryphal to start, but the idea... So, people have always been using bugs to refer to engineering problems. That has a long history. But one of the first computer bugs ever found was in a 1947 Harvard computer, and it was literally a bug. A moth had gotten into the circuits of this giant room-sized computer and died, and was causing a whole bunch of software glitches. So that's one of the slightly apocryphal reasons people say that we still use the phrase computer bugs today. But another one, so scientists in 2018 recently found another species of exploding ant.
What?
Yes, exploding ants. So what these ants do is they bite onto predators, and then they rip open their own thoraxes to spill corrosive yellow goo all over the attackers. So these ants basically blow themselves up to protect the hive with their yellow goo.
Okay, so they do not detonate.
No,
They
they
do not literally
rip themselves open.
Okay, they carry within them a terrible ooze,
Yes,
and they
release.
They release it upon their attacker violently.
Yeah, there's not like literal combustion, but pretty close to it.
I know, that was why when you said exploding ants, I was like, well, shit, we're fucked now. We've barely been able to contain them as is, let alone if they can blow themselves up.
Yeah, it's no good.
I mean, it's not good anyway. I assume that an ant pinching onto you and then releasing some sort of acid onto your skin is not great either.
No, I don't want it. I'll tell you that much.
No, I don't want it either. Man, ugh. Well, with that note, let's introduce our second co-host, M. the Mind Palladino. Hello.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me. This game is a game. We're going to talk about it. I always say that because it's always true. This got very good reviews. I don't know. We'll discuss.
I feel there's a bit of self-selection with this game because if there's someone who would want to play a 40-something hour CRPG, I think there's only so many people who want that on any given staff. And if you want that, you're predisposed to like this game. I think it's really self-selecting in terms of its audience. But we'll get to that.
Certainly is. It's all on the table. ZP has made sure to make sure that we address CRPGs as a whole, as well as everything about this game. So here we go. I'm opening my Games 101 notes as we speak.
Excellent. So before we do CRPG stuff, do you want to hit the Discord report? Oh, before we Discord report. You can get in touch with the show at Deep Listens Pod on Twitter, deeplistens.libsyn.com. We've got our comment sections, and deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. You can also support us on patreon.com/deeplistens, and that will get you access to the Discord so that you can be on the Discord report.
This week on the Discord report, I heard you and ZP had your Extra Life. Not this weekend, but last weekend?
We did, and for those who didn't listen to the last podcast, we played Final Fantasy VIII Remastered. We raced it. We did a speedrun race, and we each had different challenges that would come up if we raised enough money, and it turns out we both hit our... I had a goal of $1,000, ZP had a goal of $500, and we both got to $500 within the first hour, which caused both of us to do everything that our incentives required, except for me, because my last incentive was to beat Omega Weapon, and I didn't get my $1,000th until I was in the credits. So I luckily dodged that bullet. But yeah, raised $1,666. I raised exactly $1,000, and ZP raised $666, which is just the best.
Of course he did.
And it went really well. We finished in about 15 hours, which is longer than I usually like to see, but I had to do, nonsense to extend the game so that ZP could maybe keep up with me. So,
what sort of nonsense did you do?
I had to get all of the GFs, every single one of them, including the optional ones, and so many of the optional ones are a pain in the ass to get, and especially Doom Train. And I had to beat the... Have you ever played all of FF8 or FF8 at all?
I've played enough of it to get an impression of it.
You know that robot?
All of it.
That robot when you're taking the seed test and it chases you?
Yes.
You can kill that.
Yes. It's hard.
It's hard. I killed it.
I see. Good job.
Yeah, so that took an extra 20 minutes. So I would say there was about a good 2 to 3 hours of nonsense in my run. But I ended up winning the race, so that's what's important.
Mm-hmm.
And raising money for children. Also children's hospitals. That's also what's important.
That's also a good thing. Anything else?
ZP's continuing to be sad about the Sacramento Kings, which is fair.
Yes.
He did want to know, Pete, how do you feel about the Philadelphia 76ers now that they are good and fun to watch?
I mean, I still want to hate the process. Like, how far can we be from the process and not credit the process anymore?
Joel Embiid's retired.
Okay. I like it. I can't really, be angry about it, but I am happy that, Toronto won the title, a team that didn't tank in the process sense of the world. So I would like the Sixers to be good and another team that didn't tank to still be better.
Excellent. And we will be putting together another game night. We missed our Splatoon game night, Splatoon 2. And I would like to put together a Splatoon 2 game night again because I got some cool clothes in that game, and I want to wear them and shoot other people with ink. So that is the Discord report. Community stuff is ongoing. Be sure to support the show if you can, and then you can join our little chat room. We do have emails. We have feedback. This email comes in from Jen. And she asks, have you ever thought about how your bones are wet?
I try not to.
That's it.
No, that's a disturbing thought that's never occurred to me. I will take it up with my med school girlfriend, see what she has to say on the subject.
Because, like you, Pete, also hadn't thought about it. And then you read that and you're like, fuck, that's right. But did you ever they're wet on the outside, but also they're full of goo that makes blood.
It's all blood. Everything is blood.
It's gross. It's bad.
Yeah, bones are weird.
Bones
that was one of the early proofs for the literality of the Bible, especially Genesis, the story of the Old Testament, was that women have one fewer rib than men, because Adam, he took men have one fewer rib than women because they took one of Adam's ribs to make Eve. Totally not true at all. The only thing you had to do to disprove that was look at a person's ribs.
Yeah.
Apparently nobody bothered to.
Huh.
If you counted it, you were stoned as a witch for many centuries. But yeah, now that I've thought that thought, I can't unthink it, and it hurts. Now
all of our listeners get to have that experience too.
Yep.
Enjoy.
Enjoy, and I'm sorry. So I've been bouncing around between gimmicks. I was doing close-up magic for a bit, and I think I want to settle on what's a thing that I'm enjoying outside of games that I would recommend. Gino loves, or Gino likes. I don't know. If you've got a better name for what this gimmick should be, I am open-minded to it. But I'm a pretty obsessive person. I am someone who usually gets into something, and if I get into something, I get into it all the way because I don't half-ass things. I whole-ass everything. So I've mentioned Carol and Tuesday. I've mentioned what's it called? Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. I've mentioned a few shows that I've enjoyed. Now, something outside of gaming that I've enjoyed. Have you watched Hocus Pocus recently?
Oh, man. Not recently.
The Halloween movie with Bette Midler.
Oh, yeah. It's a great movie.
It is.
Yeah, it's a classic.
So I watched it about 2 to 3 times during the Halloween season because I'm married to a millennial. A millennial lady, and so we had to watch Hocus Pocus. And I don't know if you've watched that movie recently, but as someone who has watched it multiple times recently, they just call that kid, the main kid, he's a virgin, and it's important, it's storyline significant that he is a virgin. And throughout much of the movie, everyone's just ripping on him for being a virgin. And let me tell you, he's like 14 or 15, and
I was going to ask, how old's the kid?
He's like 15, and it's
and
super
he hasn't had
uncomfortable.
sex yet?
Yeah.
What? What kind of weirdo is he?
Exactly. Maybe 16, maybe 16, 17. Even still, like there's a scene where he goes up to a cop and he's like, "Hey, cop, there's these witches. They've come back to life. Please help me. I need to stop them. I was a virgin. I lit a candle." And then the cop, he lowers his sunglasses. He looks at him and goes, "Hey, kid, you a virgin?" And I'm like, what a...
What a terrible cop.
If a cop does that to you in real life, you should run away.
What a creepy thing. And he's like, yes, officer, I am. This Disney movie has multiple scenes of random adults asking this child if he's a virgin, and I find it off-putting. But the movie is delightful. Bette Midler's delightful. There's an entire sequence where Sarah Jessica Parker is dancing with someone dressed as the devil and calling him master because she's a witch. There's another sequence where they get on a bus, and somehow this town in Massachusetts is full of Italians, and I don't know why. And the bus driver's like, "Hey, ladies, welcome to my bus." And she's like, "We want children." And he's like, "Hey, I could get you children. It might take a few tries, though. Hey-oh."
Nice. I will say I do prefer Nina Simone's version of I Put a Spell on You, but I mean, who can really compete with Miss Simone when you think about it?
That's true. And, good for Bette Midler for getting to sing in this weird Disney movie. So I would say, Hocus Pocus, go back to it, take a look. It's a treat, and it's also deeply unsettling in a number of ways.
I heard they're making another one, I think.
I hope so.
That might be untrue, but I feel like I've heard a lot of talk on the subject.
I've heard similar chatter. I can't remember where from, though.
Bette Midler's got to be available. What's she got going on at this point? But I guess
she doesn't have to do anything.
They're very dead at the end of that movie, though. Spoilers.
Are they?
Yeah, they explode. They turn to stone and then explode. Spoilers.
You could get up from that.
That's true.
They're witches. They have magic.
They do have magic. The devil. There's a lot of stuff going on. And the book is still around, so.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's it for Gino Loves. Their new segment idea. If you have a better name for it, please tell me, because this is a bad name. So, without further ado, let us discuss Disco Elysium. Em or Pete, what's Disco Elysium?
Disco Elysium is we're going to have to get into the CRPG thing.
Yep.
We will get to it. It is a CRPG. It was made
October 15th, 2019. It's a month old.
Almost exactly a month old. It's by CAUM. In this game, you are playing a detective who has lost his memory, ostensibly from drinking a lot. You wake up and you have been investigating a murder. There is a body hanging in a tree behind the motel you are staying in. You need to figure out what happened, but you don't know who you are. The game itself is a fairly open world. It opens up more the later in the game you get, and there is no combat. Everything is handled by skill checks.
And dice rolls.
Yes, everything is based on dice rolls. You have 4 abilities, and they all have 6 skills associated with them. There's intellect, which is all mind stuff. That's smarts. Psyche, which is your creativity, your...
mental fortitude.
Yeah. There's physique, which is body, and then motorics. Motorics?
Reflexes, motor skills.
Yeah, it's reflexes. And then all of these have like a million different skills associated with them that you will be rolling throughout the game. That's a rough rundown of the mechanics.
Yeah, so intellect, you've got sub-skills like logic, encyclopedia, so just random knowledge you have. Rhetoric, which is your ability to convince people of things. Drama, your ability to act. Conceptualization, which helps with like putting together artsy stuff. And then visual calculus, which is like recreating crime scenes and stuff. Psyche has volition, which I don't remember what that even does. Inland Empire is kind of your madness.
Volition is like your willpower, basically. So like you have to psych yourself up to do certain things, like examining dead bodies and such, or like accosting interview subjects. That's volition.
Okay. Inland Empire is like your ability to, I don't know, imagine it's like your imagination almost.
It's such a pain in the ass. It's so annoying.
Yeah.
We'll get to that.
We'll get to it. There's empathy, which is your ability to relate to other people. Authority, which is your ability to impose your will on others. Esprit de corps, which is your cop senses. Tells you how familiar you are with other cops and how much other cops like you. Stuff like that.
Yeah, it's like camaraderie, esprit de corps.
Suggestion, again, your ability to suggest things to other people and have them take your suggestion. Physique has endurance, how much pain you can take. Pain threshold, again, how much pain you can take. Physical instrument, so if you need to force open a door or bang on something, that's that. Electrochemistry, which is your drug addiction, I guess. Is that fair to say?
That sounds about right.
It's like your subjectiveness to drugs and alcohol. Shivers, which is like your sense of the street and just kind of like your awareness of your surroundings. And then half-light, I don't remember what that is. I never used it.
I have no idea. A lot of these I have never actually seen in the game itself.
And then motorics, you've got hand-eye coordination, which is obvious. Perception, which like telling your surroundings. Reaction speed, again, self-obvious. Savoir-faire, which is your like balance. Interfacing, which is if you touch something, can you kind of read something from that touch? And then your composure, which is, again, like your ability to hold your constitution when someone's pressing you or someone's asking you a hard question without you cracking. So there's a bunch of stats, and all these stats trigger different die rolls and allow different dialogue options. Actually, it's not really unlocking dialogue options. It's more like allowing you to succeed at some of them. And usually that success will allow the dialogue to move on. And this is very, very indicative of a CRPG, correct?
Indeed, it is. So, let's talk about CRPGs, because I know ZP is on the edge of his seat somewhere, because he was very concerned that we would not give this game its fair shake, because we have very little experience, at least I have very little experience, with this genre. So, CRPGs are branching out of the Dungeons & Dragons realm into computer games. So CRPGs got their start around like the 1980s, I want to say, like mid-80s. They began with a game called Wizardry. We're going to go through the whole... I was not kidding about my Games 101 notes. So...
There were many Wizardry games.
Wizardry was on the Apple II. It established the computer dungeon crawl RPG. It introduced classic elements such as the adventuring party, balancing different classes and powers, and wandering through a simulated 3D space. This is like the core of most CRPGs. It's taking all those elements that you would have in like Dungeons and Dragons and converting it into a digital format. A lot of the dice rolls that you would get in like regular tabletop games usually happen behind the scenes in RPGs. CRPGs, it's much more overt. In the case of Disco Elysium, you actually see dice on the screen. Yeah, whenever you do a roll. From Wizardry, there was a lot of stuff. Ultima, Fallout 1 and 2, these were both CRPGs. This was like groundbreaking for 1997. A lot of what this genre allows for is very expressive characters, not like, facial features. I mean, like, you can make these archetypes in the games. It's set up so you can play any kind of character, basically role play. It also put a big focus on moral choices. Fallout is known for this. This is like the backbone of CRPGs as a whole. CRPGs are also noteworthy for being like Western computer RPGs as opposed to JRPGs. CRPGs were like what we were doing in America while Japan was getting Final Fantasies and such.
It's important to notice that these two divergent schools, kind of the Western RPG and the JRPG, for those of you who have been listening to the Final Fantasy podcasts, our ongoing ranking of fantasies, Final Fantasy I also drew heavy inspiration from Dungeons & Dragons, and you can see that in the stats and the character classes. CRPGs, at least, they seem more fixated on the stats and mechanics of D&D in a more direct way, like literal die rolls and a bunch of different character stats that you can apply and then raise. JRPGs at least have developed in a way where you've got a bunch of stats and your numbers keep going up, you get equipment, but it's more around the adventure than it is around like the very literal mechanics of D&D. And it seems like a lot of CRPGs still take the D&D die roll mechanics and specific character traits that are kind of broad instead of always having a very combat-focused gameplay. Like there's a lot of dialogue-based gameplay and then your stats playing into that as well. They tend to hew a little bit closer to D&D's design aesthetic and mechanical backbone. Fair to say, you think, Em?
Sounds about right.
So in Disco Elysium, you're playing as a cop who wakes up, has amnesia, and that amnesia allows you to basically set up your cop however you want him to be. He doesn't remember who he was. He doesn't remember what he's doing. So you are given basically a blank slate character. And unlike in a JRPG where you might just have literally a blank slate character with no backstory, this guy's backstory apparently exists, but you're kind of discovering it as you go. And I don't know if the backstory changes. I'm almost certain that the backstory changes depending on how you're playing your character and what traits you pick for them.
Yeah, I'd be interested to know if that was the case, because I didn't do very much reading because I didn't want to like spoil anything for myself. But given that this game is like completely, this, what was I saying? This game is completely beholden to its like idea that you can be whatever kind of cop you want. It's literally on the packaging, on the box art. What kind of cop are you? I feel like that would lend itself to defining yourself as you play rather than uncovering a backstory.
Yeah, and from here on out, it's fair to say, I mean, this game's only a month old, and we didn't finish it. Each of us got to the third day of the investigation. You're investigating a murder. So it'll be pretty spoiler. There'll be some spoilers. It won't spoil the entire game. And some of these things that we're spoiling will be fairly obvious very early on in the story. So we're not going to give everything away, but just be warned. Usually I don't say anything about spoiler warnings because we're playing games that are 10 plus years old. Or, it's something that you've had plenty of time to play. But this one, we're actually pretty contemporary, so everything from here on out, we'll be discussing story stuff, not just the mechanical underpinnings. So I noticed early on you are able to find your notes from, like, what you were taking before your character got blackout drunk. And what makes me think that your character's backstory is filled in based on how you play is that in my character's, I think it's just like a clipboard, a fancy clipboard. In that clipboard, it keeps track of like how many people you've killed and how many cases you've solved. And my character, did you both find the clipboard?
Yes.
Yeah, found my notes.
Okay. And my clipboard said I had solved like 200 cases and had only killed 3 people.
Yeah, I had the same numbers, generally, yeah.
You had the same numbers?
Yeah.
Okay, so then maybe it is the same for everyone. I just thought that I was playing my character pretty by the books, like textbook, pretty nice. So it seemed like he would have solved a bunch of cases and also not been particularly violent. But maybe we all played our characters in a similar way. What was your balance of traits?
So I went heavily into the psyche, which I think my physique and motorics took the biggest hit. Both of those were like 3 and 2. And then my psyche was like 5. And because my psyche was so high, my Inland Empire was super high. So I would end up having conversations with like the mirror in my bathroom and my tie, and just every object was speaking to me, which I think might be a bad thing given that I spent so much time talking to my stuff. I like lost time talking to people, and then my intellect was like 3. It was fine. How'd you break down?
So for me, I think I had 3 in intellect, 5 in psyche, 4 or 5 in psyche, 2 in physique, and 3 in motorics.
Oh no, we're the same.
I was pretty balanced, but I put so you get to make one trait like your super trait, and I made mine empathy. I wanted my cop to be very empathetic and very understanding. So that was kind of where I leaned. Pete, how'd you make your cop?
I went sort of like a Sherlock Holmes sort of thing. I was like, well, Sherlock Holmes was a cocaine addict, so I guess this works for me too. So I poured most of mine in the like intellect stats, and I think I highlighted whatever is like visual acuity, like whatever your observational skills, visual calculus. There we go. So I put a lot of points into that to like try to see things,
Mm-hmm.
That's a good one.
So did you do a lot of drugs?
No, I actually played it pretty straight-laced from there on. Because, I was with Kim, my partner, and he seemed a pretty by-the-book cop, and I was inspired. I was like, you know what, I'm going to be more like Kim.
Kim's a good guy.
So early on in the game, you get Kim. He's your partner. He follows you around and doesn't really comment on anything you do, for the most part. Like, he'll give you a side-eye if you do something that seems dubious. But it seems that the cops in this world are thugs a lot of the time. Like, they're barely cops?
Technically, they're the RCM, so they're Revanchal Citizens Militia. So they're like volunteers / police / shakedown artists, basically.
Yeah, so they have some authority as cops, but a lot of it is just militarily given, it seems, and they don't actually cover all of the territories in this fictional country that you're in. You've basically, the area you're in, Martinez, it's basically a slum that has not seen much police presence in years, and the cops that have been assigned there there's not actually a precinct assigned to Martinez. It's between two precincts, and that's why Kim is there with you, because your precinct of Jamrock and Kim's precinct both kind of are fighting over this turf for some reason. And you're there to take down a dead body that's been, like, hung in a tree for over a week when you take over. So there's been a dead body, there's been a murder, and no one's come to even take the body down for over a week. So that kind of gives you a sense of the setting.
I guess you are supposed to be the one to take down the body.
Yes.
But it's really hard. Did
And,
any of you figure out how to take the body down?
yeah. I was able to
Yeah,
get
I
the body
did,
down.
but I wasn't happy about it, like what I had to do it.
How did y'all approach taking the body down?
I didn't get the body down.
Oh, your body's still up. That's
It's
bad.
still in that tree.
So I sort of cheated. I agreed with Everett, and I was like, yeah, I'll help you out if you take the body down. And I was like, I don't want to do that. So then I shot it down instead.
I tried to shoot it down, failed to shoot it down, and then I shook down. Well, no, he just asked me to, like, unlock a door or something, which was very clearly intimidating. So this game is very heavy-handed with its symbolism, and there's two groups kind of at odds that causes the level of tension in this town to rise up. There's a union, a trade union, that handles shipping, that is kind of the center of this town, and then there's the actual company that does the shipping. I think it's Wild Pines. And the tension between the union and the corporation is kind of the central tension of this town and in some ways the game. And you can kind of become indebted to the union, or you can side with the union. You can also side with the corporation. But one way you can get this body down is you can talk to the union boss, and he will have his heavy kind of go over there and take the body down for you if you agree to do him a small favor. Which that's how I got it down.
There's a lot of favors in this game.
Yeah, there is. Everybody, too, is the worst possible version of the thing they could be.
Yes.
Like, the union is just a way to gold brick and sort of forestall any work. There's a whole bunch of scabs that are working to try to break the union.
But it's
like,
clear
everybody's
that
awful.
it's also clear one of the scabs is not an actual scab and is clearly being paid by the corporation. He's like this giant man who's just constantly shouting right to work. And everyone else looks like a regular worker. The corporate representative just keeps saying, I won't talk to you without your badge and like a warrant. The artists are kind of shitty, and there's like kids who are really shitty, and
Kuno doesn't care.
Yeah,
Fucking Kuno.
Kuno fucking sucks.
I wish you could, like, I kind of want to just shoot Kuno. You've only killed 3 people. 4 is not that big a number either.
Did you ever figure out what Kuno's deal was?
Yeah, I got my empathy up enough to, like, figure out his problem.
Yeah.
It's sad. Like, I won't deny Kuno's life sucks, but he's still awful and I hate him.
Yeah. Resolving Kuno's problem is pretty interesting. What his deal is. And there's a lot of stuff. Part of this is that this game has a ton of divergent content that you may or may not see, and you don't need to see any of it. Like,
I feel like I have not seen anything because I have no idea what you guys are talking about.
You know the kid? The shitty kid?
Yeah.
You can talk to him. He's got a hideout you can find.
Yeah, I found the hideout.
You found the hideout?
I haven't figured out anything about what his deal is.
If you go down a dialogue tree with him, it'll say, like, what's this kid's deal? You might need a certain level of empathy or a certain level of one stat to think about asking him about it. But if you pass a white check, which there are white and red dialogue checks in this game, white checks can be reattempted if you've gotten better at whatever stat it's checking against, and red checks are one time only. So this is a check that you can do, and if you pass it, he will basically tell you some stuff about his life and his situation at home. And
I must have failed that.
Lets you in on him and what his deal is, and like the girl who's shouting at him as well. Like, there's a lot of stuff going on. Like, did you figure out what's going on in the bookstore?
Yeah, the
Oh.
bookstore's weird too.
You mean The Haunting, right?
Yes.
Yeah, was
Okay.
it the Doomed Commercial District? Is that the name?
Yes. Yeah, so the books, like, the area you're in is really run down, and there's this large commercial structure that has, most of the shops are boarded up, but there's just this bookstore and basically the inn that you're in, and I think a pharmacy, pretty much, are the only stores that are left. And the bookstore owner is very superstitious and believes that her store is haunted, or the back room of her store is cursed, and she has put up talismans and things to keep the curse from affecting her bookstore and ruining her sales. Did either of you convince her to let you into the back room?
I just opened the curtain.
Did you go further in?
Just walked in. Yeah, I went through the whole thing.
Okay, so you found the old abandoned game company,
Yeah.
and
The prime industry is custom dice making, which is obviously a money maker wherever you can do it.
yep. And did you find the polar bear?
Yeah, the cooler.
What the fuck?
Fridge.
There's a big ass polar bear fridge.
Yep. Yeah. So, Pete, did you get to use that fridge?
No, actually, I didn't need to because my visual acuity got high enough that I was able to examine the body completely, so to
Oh.
speak.
Okay.
So the body has secrets. There are layers to this mystery.
Yeah, I didn't get my visual acuity up enough yet. So you need a place to store the body if you aren't satisfied with your autopsy. So you can put it in the freezer. In the polar bear freezer, if you find it. Did either of you take the mug from the did you get into the
Yes.
trash?
Yes.
Yes, I take everything. Whenever I find a thing, I take it.
Yeah,
If I
and this
find
game
something, I take it.
This game does not say anything about you stealing everything. Like, if you go into someone's house and you find something, just take it. You can open locked doors and just rob places, and Kim doesn't say shit. The world doesn't seem to have much to say about it either. Like, I stole a stuffed bird off of the wall of, like, a tiny slum home with a small child in it, and the girl didn't even say anything about it. No one said anything. CRPGs, what are you going to say? Maybe this game...
Kim does make a reference to it at one point. I don't know if he does it regardless of what you do, but he says something about you rummaging around like it's a post-apocalyptic wasteland or something, like just stealing things. I don't know if he says that regardless, though. He did say it to me.
He says that my character does the Jamrock Shuffle, and apparently people from your precinct are known for running around like a chicken with their head cut off, and just kind of like haphazardly grabbing things, and that this is a feature of your district. But yeah, if you get that mug out of the trash, you can use that mug comes up. You can find the owner of the mug. But for a while, I was just showing it to anyone who, when that was a dialogue option, I was just like, "This your mug?"
Is this your mug with a racist depiction on it?
It's like, yeah, murder. I'll get to it. The mug. Is it your mug?
Is this yours? It's got a man on it. What does it make you think? You seem like a racist. This your mug? Yeah, there's a lot of weird... What was the side quest thing that you found the most enjoyment in?
So if you get your rhetoric high enough, you know the two old men who were playing basically bocce in the park?
Yeah, I threw one of their balls into the ocean.
Yeah, so did I too. You can
They didn't
replace
like
it with a
that.
shot put ball, though.
I did.
But if
They
you-
don't like your shot put ball.
No, they don't. But if you get your rhetoric high enough, you can convince the one guy to give you his sandwich. You basically just argue a sandwich away from this old man. I have no idea what the sandwich is for. I haven't found the purpose yet, but I like that I basically just tricked a man into giving me his half-eaten sandwich. It's in your inventory as giant ham sandwich.
Can you eat it?
I haven't tried. Do you need to eat? I haven't eaten anything, I think.
I haven't either. And the second day you wake up and my character passed out. I don't know if that always happens, but it was implied that he hadn't drank water in a long while. So it was unclear to me if that was because it was supposed to happen or because I was doing something that made my character pass out or what.
That might just be because your character is an alcoholic and passed out. I don't know.
I hadn't done any drugs, and my character kept complaining about being hungover, but none of that seemed to actually impact any of my stats or any of the way characters interacted with me. So, unclear if it matters.
Who knows? Keep playing to find out.
Yeah. And did you have any side quests or things that stuck out to you?
So, on day 2, you can talk to a woman in the lobby. You can learn about cryptozoology.
Yes!
And you will be told about various cryptids, and then if your inland empire is really high, like mine was, you will think that you are beginning to hear, like, cryptids around you. And there's a whole rabbit hole with that. I don't know if it leads anywhere, because I'm not far enough down that rabbit hole, but I can tell this is going to go places. Like, there was a, what was it? The guy in the, what's it called?
The pawn shop?
The pawn shop. He
Yeah.
knows about that.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is a weird dialogue tree that I didn't know was going to be a thing.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't know. There's a lot to this game in every corner.
Yeah, the cryptozoology was definitely where I was going to go because we didn't mention it, but there's a third mechanic. Like, there's the mechanics where you're just leveling up your stats and die rolls, and you can't, I think, impact your physique or your motorics or your intellect once you've started. I think those are static. I didn't find a way to boost them, but I might be wrong. But you've also got these ideas that can... You've got 3 slots to start, and you can put these ideas into your head, and if you internalize them, they will change your stats in some way or unlock certain things in your character. And some of them will give you bonuses while you're, like, ruminating on them, but then once they are finished, they're just something that your character will now believe or will now be. So, like, you can start internalizing things like... what are some good ones? Like, if you want your character to be a communist, you can start internalizing communism. And if you get far enough, you will unlock communism, which will decrease your authority.
Oh, shit. Is that what it does?
But also give you bonus experience when you give left-wing answers to things. And it will unlock left-wing dialogue choices.
No wonder my authority is so bad.
Yeah, so there's, like, stuff like that. You can internalize. There was one character who's a just terrible racist, like Seminese supremacist.
Right, Measurehead.
He's
7'6".
Yeah.
Yeah, he's 7'6", covered in tattoos, speaks in all caps, and just has a host of horrible racist views. And he just will talk about, like, the skull sizes of different races and whether that makes them superior or inferior. And then this race has a mongrel combination with this other race, and if they have kids, it's the worst. He's terrible. And you need to get past him, or you want to get past him, to examine some area that's behind him. And your options to get past him are beat him up, which my character was not strong enough to beat up this 7'6" giant, or you can internalize racism and then have a discussion with him about racial hierarchies.
Did you change his worldview?
No, because to have that conversation, I had to internalize terrible race trutherism, and I did not want my character... This is one of those things where the game's logic is a little bit opaque. I didn't know if internalizing that would make my character a horrible racist or would just make my character more able to discuss terrible racism. So I decided I didn't want my character to spend a lot of time thinking about race truths. And I said,
That's fair.
I guess I'm just not going to get past Measurehead. Oh well.
There is a way to get back there, though.
Yeah, I found a roundabout way of jumping behind where he's guarding. But
literally jumping.
Yeah. I found a way around him.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a little uncomfortable. And there are a lot of times when you're kind of memorizing these ideas where it's unclear what the idea will do for you in the long term. Like, will it mess your character up really badly? Will it cause them to get a lot of benefit or what? But it's an interesting mechanic, to say the least. And I internalized that there's a cryptid that is a sound. It is a living sound wave, is what they think it is. And this cryptid, you can internalize the idea that you're hearing this thing. Like, you can detect it with your ears, even though it's supersonic or subsonic. So,
what do you get from doing that?
I believe you get more. It's like attentiveness or something, or perception. I think you get more perception, but then you get less encyclopedia. So you get more perception because now you're, paying attention. You can hear this sound that no one else can hear, but you can't keep anything else in your brain because you're obsessed with this one thing.
Uh-huh.
So
like any true cryptid hunter.
Yes.
Gotcha.
So did you both get access to the cop? It's the cop rankings or cop. What kind of cop are you?
Oh yeah.
I twice rejected a promotion to lieutenant, sergeant. I'm up there. I'm pretty big deal.
Wait, what?
Oh, sorry. I thought you were talking say like you find your identity. You guys didn't find your badge?
I just found my badge, but I didn't.
Oh, okay.
I didn't read it yet. I more meant the like
what
you
kind
get
of cop you are.
Yeah, you can be a sad cop. You can be
gotcha.
A sorry cop. You can be a superstar cop. There are a bunch of cop types, capo types. I think that's what they call them.
What's your capo type, Gino?
Mine was the sorry cop.
Yeah, mine too.
Yeah, me three. I don't know what I did to be so sorry. I guess
you were too polite.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah, if you're polite, it gives you sorry cop, which, like, I don't know. My cop went on a bender and ruined a bunch of people's lives for no reason. So it seemed like apologizing and trying to make things better would be a smart thing to do. I don't know. You can be an action cop. So we all went down the sorry cop. Did you internalize your sadness?
No, I was just about to. And I didn't because I didn't have enough thought bubbles. You only have 3, and I had communism. I don't remember what the other 2 were. Communism was the important one.
I also had communism. I had communism and sorry cop, and you can unlock more slots. So instead of putting points into skills, you can unlock more thought slots.
Why would I ever do that?
This game has so many mechanics, and a lot of them they don't make their efficacy readily apparent. You kind of have to have a leap of faith that this will be important or be useful in the future. And early on, I was very scared that I would ruin my playthrough by putting too many points into one thing or another, or by saying the wrong thing in dialogue. Because sometimes, like, I would misclick, and all of a sudden my character would say something terribly racist and then ruin my relationship with a character going forward. And that felt kind of shitty. So I was taking everything really safely and slowly, and then it seemed the further on I got, the less seriously the world took itself, and the less seriously I felt I needed to take my character. So it felt more like just free roam to play around in this space because nothing mattered.
Mm-hmm. I will say that is a very CRPG stance for it to take.
Did you find the radical centrist?
No.
What is a radical centrist? Is it like one of the neutrals?
Kind of. I guess it was more of a radical neoliberal. There's a guy you can talk to who is a representative of the coalition, which I don't know if you know. So this space you're in is a pretty interesting town. It's like the country you're in was ruled by a king at one point. It was a monarchy, and then there was a communist uprising that kind of, overthrew the world order, started a completely new system of government, and then neighboring capitalist nations formed a coalition and put down the communist uprising and have installed kind of a proxy government over this country. So you're kind of in this space where everything is contested, all of these different ideologies mesh, and you can meet a bureaucrat who is from the coalition, and he just keeps talking about how he's going to bring, you need to bring capitalism to these places so that they will have law and order, and once they have law and order, they will have prosperity. And yes, this country they're not in the coalition, but if they prove that they can obey laws for X amount of time, they'll be given a provisional license to perhaps join the coalition.
This is imperialism. You're describing imperialism.
It is imperialism, but it's all tinged in market vocabulary and in modern, bringing democracy to the people sort of vocabulary. It's very clearly supposed to be a parody of kind of, I don't know, modern center-left, kind of libertarian when it comes to what people can believe, but also very indebted to capitalism. It was an odd person to meet in this game. And again, Pete, it goes back to your comment that all of these people are the shittiest representation of whatever they're supposed to be.
Yeah,
stand-ins for.
There's this weird sort of relationship with the game to plot and ideology and really any sort of idea of having a point. Because it's so sandboxy, right? Because it's a game as opposed to a film or a novel or something. It has this space to explore and just sort of have everything, let's say, it's interesting in a way, but it's also daunting. It's very, I don't know, haphazard, perhaps. That, because it's a game, you can jam in so much that it's actually less than the sum of its parts. You know?
Yeah, and I thought that for a lot of it, this game there's so much going on, it really made me distracted. It made me feel like I had to juggle a dozen things at a time. And it's clear that the game wants you to go down these threads, and you kind of pick what thread you want to follow. But it made it hard for me to focus on what matters in this world. Does anything matter? Or is it just a big sandbox to play around with your fun toys and your action figures? And considering this game, the things that you're meant to toy around with are literal ideologies and your relationships to others. And so I don't know, having a world where your main character is a racist fascist and having that just be a way that you can walk through the world versus being, a open-minded communist or a racist communist. You can be all of these things and the world allows all of it. And it kind of makes the game's message a little bit muddied, if there is one.
Well, that might be the message, right? It's sort of interestingly postmodern in its way that, look, all these ideologies are more or less interchangeable. Really, it's just all a base grab for power, which is a very sort of nihilistic in the negative sense way of looking at things. But that might be the message, right? That, look, at base, all these ideologies are just different ways of masking inherent power relations. Which would explain why everybody's the worst version of themselves.
Yeah, and to a certain degree, it felt almost like South Park morality. If you make everyone a shitty caricature of whatever beliefs they're supposed to be articulating, then there's no value difference between any of them, right? Because if everything's a joke and everyone's just full of shit, then you don't actually the differences in kind don't matter, right? If the Union is doing slightly better like, the union here is clearly not actually doing super well by its members, right? It's led by a criminal. They seem to be largely a crime syndicate masquerading as a union. So then this union's terrible, but also the corporation has hired private military contractors to come in and bust a strike. So actually the capitalists are also semi-fascists, and they hire literal murderers to come in and deal with their labor disputes. So, hey, it turns out everyone's shitty, so why pick a side? Everyone's terrible. All of it's bad.
Yep.
Which then, like, you know, that can be your message, but
it's a pretty shitty message.
It kind of is.
It's a message that's popular with sort of like a certain... You know what it is? So Adorno has this phrase. He calls it pseudo-intellectualism, where, like, you know just enough that you start looking for, like, magic bullet conspiracy answers, or you settle on this sort of, like, this juvenile theory here that, like, look, I can point out the contradictions inherent in certain things, so everything must be terrible. You know what I mean? Like, that's how you end up with racist thought processes. You're intelligent enough to look for patterns, but you're not educated, you're not insightful enough to recognize real patterns. So you end up with these shitty half-truths.
Yeah, and that's kind of a lot of, maybe, like, we all made it to the third day, which we're only probably halfway or less than halfway through the game, but that's kind of my...
I assume it's a week, yeah.
I assume, but I've seen mixed messages on how long this game... You might be able to solve the murder faster or slower, depending on how you go. So, at least for me, it seemed like this game, as of now, is more interested in presenting you with options and then not having an opinion than it is on telling a cohesive story. It wants to support hundreds of stories instead of telling one good story, which feels like it's an impressive writing feat, and I can appreciate it from afar, but a lot of this game felt very self-indulgent, and it feels like it's trying to be a whole lot of things at once. And maybe it's just my preference. I prefer one focused narrative to a dozen that I can just grab onto and play with the ones that maybe I find interesting or not, and not really knowing what's important. What's significant to the story, what's significant to the characters. I don't know. I that's just my preference, generally.
Spoken like a true JRPG fan.
Yep. I prefer I prefer a through line. I don't mind having, there's games that have a center and then a bunch of spokes coming off of it. JRPGs are linear with kind of branching paths off of this main path, but you always come back to the main path. This game feels like a web.
Yeah.
Like, you start at one place, and then you can go out in a bunch of different directions, and it seems like each of those directions actually has a termination point to it that might impact the final termination point, which is interesting. It's a challenging way to design a game, and it's impressive how deep into that they got and how successful it seems to be. But it's not my cup of tea, and it's kind of overwhelming, I found. Any other thoughts on Disco Elysium? Are you planning on finishing it?
I would like to. It's interesting enough that I'm not, like, repulsed by the thought of continuing with it. So I would like to find some resolution to it. I don't think we need to spend more time with it, though. As a podcast, I mean.
I don't plan on finishing it. Like you said, we're only halfway through, but I don't really have much sympathy for not making an argument. It seems like this sort of nihilism, where it's not like Nietzsche's nihilism, where it's like, look, you're the author of your own universe, you make your truth. Rather, it's like, there is no truth, everything's equivalent, it's all shitty. I don't have a lot of patience for that as an approach.
Yeah, same, and that's kind of where I am. I'm I probably put 10, 20 hours into this game, and my character seems to be muddling through this world that's kind of crappy, and that can be the message, but I don't know. I kind of wanted something more cohesive. And I find the writing tedious in a number of spots. Like, you can get down these dialogue trees, and characters are just talking paragraph after paragraph after paragraph, and I just want to leave. Like, I don't want to be in the conversation anymore, but lines of dialogue will come back up and be important. So I feel the need to read it, and when you're doing that much reading, it better be good. And sometimes it just feels a little bit indulgent.
Yeah, there's a lot of writing in this game, too. And not all of it can be relevant.
Yeah, and it feels like they managed to trick me into reading codex entries sometimes. And I generally don't read codex entries in games, for the most part. Yeah, I just wish this game was a little punchier. But it's interesting. I think there's definitely an audience for this. I just don't think I'm in it.
That's fair.
I think that's it for Disco Elysium, unless Em or Pete, one of you have any final thoughts.
No, I think we sort of summed up my position on it so far.
My favorite mechanic in this game is your clothes can up or lower certain stats. So, in order to get my coat back, which was stuck on a balcony, I had to take my pants and my shoes off, and then I made the jump. And I don't know why all the clothes have, like, those sorts of things. It's just weird. It's a very weird game.
Yeah, it is odd that your very serious cop, well, I guess you don't have to be serious. You can be a clown. That's allowed too. But you can just, like, wear a kimono and a pair of rec specs and shorts. Like, you could wear this ridiculous outfit because you need your stats to be a certain way. And no one in this game says anything about it. They're all just like, yeah, sure. Like, I guess Kim sometimes would comment that I had gardener's gloves on.
Mm-hmm.
But
he did like to point that out.
Yeah, it was because gardener's gloves increased my interfacing skills.
And they had no downside.
Exactly. They had no negative, so why would I ever take them off?
It's certainly something.
It's certainly interesting. I wish I liked it more, but I don't.
I feel like we're going to be getting a long email from ZP on this subject next week.
That's fine. I mean, I don't think it's a bad game. I just don't think it's my general thing.
That's fair.
It's a lot. It's a lot of brooding. It's real grimy. I think the art design and the music is actually very, very solid, though.
Oh, yeah.
Like, the look of this game is very evocative.
It's watercolors, and it's really neat.
Yeah, and the music is sparse in spots, but generally sets the mood well.
Mm-hmm.
So there's definitely craft here. It's just, it's a lot. So I think that'll cover it for Disco Elysium. You can go ahead and get in touch with the show. Let us know if you had different experiences or what kind of cop you are. You can get in touch with us at DeepListensPod on Twitter, deeplistens.libsyn.com. We've got our comment sections, and deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. You can support us on patreon.com/deeplistens. If you contribute, you can get access to our Discord and hop on in the community. Please support the show if you can. If you can't support with money, rate and review on iTunes or Stitcher or whatever you're listening to this on. That always helps as well. And now it's time to say what we're playing next. So because Thanksgiving is coming up, and we're so thankful for our community and for the people who support the show, we took some suggestions on games that the community would like to see us play. We don't want to have some, right now at least, we're not doing some sort of Patreon pick what game we play because we're afraid that if we do that, then we'll just be playing Patreon games forever. And, we like picking the games. We like playing games that we want to play most of the time. So we took some suggestions and looked at them and saw which ones interested us as well. And one game that came up actually was right up M's alley, and I happen to already have it. It's in my hand right now as we speak. M, what game is it?
We are going to play Mega Man Battle Network 3. Game straight out of my childhood.
Excellent. Yes, I have Mega Man Battle Network 3 Blue. There's apparently a white version because it's Pokemon style, y'all. So that is what we will be playing next. So thank you, M.
Thank you. Looking forward to flexing my 10 years of Mega Man Battle Network role-playing next time.
Thank you, Pete.
Yep, always a pleasure. Excited to start my, I guess, future 10 years of Mega Man Battle experience.
I mean, if you want to.
No one's stopping you from role-playing Mega Man Battle Network whenever you want, wherever you want. I find in public spaces is the ideal spot to start talking about. Well, is it megaman.roll.exe? That's a character, right?
Roll is a character and Mega Man is a character.
But aren't they all .exes?
Yes, they are.
Technology?
They are computer programs.
Yeah.
We'll get into it.
It's a whole thing. All right. Thanks, everybody. Till next time. Peace. All right. There we go. That's a show. Man, I wanted to like Disco Elysium. It's just so much.
I still like it.
I still like it. It's just not... I don't want to play so much of it. It's like 40 hours. It keeps implying that you need to play it like 5 times to really understand what's going on. It's like, I don't want to play it 5 times.
If the game is 5 hours, maybe.
I don't know that I want to play it 1 time.
Why are games always like this?
I don't know.
Why do they make 40-hour games that you have to play 5 times to get the full effect?